So speaking of finding your sourcing soulmate here, we have some exciting little information we're going to pitch out here too towards the end of this episode.
Guys, we are so excited.
So excited.
Do you have a brilliant product idea but don't know where to start to get it made? Or are you looking to level up your product but afraid to take it overseas?
If so, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Jackie.
And I'm Erin, and we are
The Sourcing Gals,
your trusted guides to everything you need to know about sourcing, manufacturing, and scaling your product overseas. Whether you are just starting out or you've been making your own product for a while, we are here to help women source products overseas without the overwhelm.
In each episode, we'll share insider tips, actionable strategies, and inspiring stories to help you source more effectively, save time, and boost your profits.
Duh!
We know how hard it can be to juggle the ins and outs of product development, but don't worry, we've got your back.
So grab a cup of coffee, get comfy, and let's dive into how you can grow your business,
make more money,
and turn your products into profit. Welcome to
The Sourcing Gals. Now let's get started. High five.
Hi. Welcome to another episode of
The Sourcing Gals. I am very excited for today's episode because we're talking about dating. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And I don't mean dating to find your life partner, which is obviously super important, but I've been off of that dating scene for quite a while. So don't ask me any of those questions because I can't help you out.
Almost 20 years, huh?
Yeah, we're getting close here. But I will tell you that I date quite a lot when it comes to factories.
You on the apps?
I get around in that dating scene, let me tell you. And it's really just because I touch a range of products.
Yes.
And so different factories are needed for different products.
And different types of producers
Exactly.
for each type of product too.
Yep.
So that's what we're going to talk about.
Depending on the scale, the quantities all the different capabilities. So I will say I'm kind of a pro when it comes to dating factories. So I'm really excited to dive into this. We have so much good stuff to talk about. So we're going to talk a lot today about defining the players. So who's out there in the dating scene when it comes to getting your product made? So I think if we take a step back, let's first talk about starting domestically, because we get questions a lot about USA made goods and how to even begin that conversation. So let's first talk about when it comes to domestic production, who are the players in the field?
Sure. So domestic production, from my perspective, they're a lot more dialed in. They're less general than what you can get overseas, which we'll get to later. But I think when it comes to domestic, the one I've used the most in my personal history is makers.
Okay.
And makers, when it comes to domestic suppliers, are probably at the beginning of the funnel, like the very most basic, most cost efficient, easiest to find, and lowest quantity, MOQ. So in my history, I'll use them for small batch. For my home decor line, I used them to sew cushion covers. I would find the fabric that I really loved. I would only want to sew into maybe 10 units per fabric to try to get a real good sense of what the customer was wanting. And then once I understood that, I would have the makers make maybe 50 to try to bridge that lead time gap between now and taking the design overseas.
So where did you find your makers for pillows, for example?
Etsy. I just found some folks on Etsy who were making their own pillows, and I reached out and I said, hey, I have my own brand. I have my own fabric. Would you be interested for a price to sew some pillows for me? And then I also found some local seamstresses in my area just by Googling.
Yeah. I'll say makers for me, I worked with makers more when I was truly growing up. So in high school and college, I started many businesses, many hobby businesses, and I loved sewing that first prototype. But beyond that, I was out. I wanted to work on the next product. So I ended up finding literally a high school girl that was willing and loved to sew. And I had belts I was making at the time. And I met her at an art class that I took at a community college. And it was like literally I posted it on a job board and she reached out to me and was like, hey, I would love to help you sew belts, right? And now we have technology like Facebook, and Facebook is a great place to, if you're literally just looking for someone to help you start with initial samples, drop it in a mom's chat or drop it in a Facebook group of your area and say, hey, I'm looking for a seamstress or a sewer to help me do XYZ. And most likely you will find somebody who can help you do that.
Absolutely. You were saying that, and I just kind of remembered that I had some really beautiful black walnut cutting boards that I used a local person, and I also found them on Facebook. I just said, hey, I'm looking for a wood craftsman to make about 50 of these for me. I have the materials, and I got someone right away.
So I think makers can be really good when you have a product idea. Maybe it's somewhat innovative. You want to test it, right?
Mhm.
We're not talking about maybe just a t-shirt here. We're talking about a unique product that you want to test the market for. You want to have your own samples of it. Maybe you're not a sewer. Maybe you're not someone that,
Right.
is great at crafting things together. So use makers to test the market. Use makers to make those first prototypes before you're even looking overseas, if it's possible.
Or even at another domestic supplier, because even past makers, we have agencies and factories that are domestic as well.
Correct. So let's talk about agencies for a while. There's manufacturing agencies, there's design agencies, there's consulting firms, right? All these different things that really on Google, you can find them, to be honest, that are mostly state based here in the US. That does not, however, mean that their manufacturing
Correct.
is stateside.
I think that's a common misconception.
I agree.
I work with a lot of product founders, people who are just embarking upon this project, and they're like, I found a factory. And when I get to looking at it, it's an agent.
Correct. So it's basically someone who's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, right? They're going to become your voice. They're going to become the go between the factories and you as the founder, as the creator. So there is a lot of benefit to that, no doubt. They are much more probably a category expert, right? They've been doing this for a while. They already have a factory base, whether that's domestic or whether that's overseas. The downside with agencies or firms is that they will be costly. You have to pay them for their time as well as when they're manufacturing their products. It's just going to be a different markup structure. So it really depends on how much time and effort you are able and willing to invest on your own versus what are you needing or willing to outsource for a cost.
And that also is a way to get lower MOQs and to get some innovative materials, because these agents will likely already have these relationships. And let's say they're making 5,000 of this product for someone else, you might be able to make 200 and kind of like tag on to the order so they can use their buying power to your advantage.
Correct. And then also domestically, you can work factory direct. There are US-based manufacturers that a lot of them are on the West Coast or the East Coast, to be honest. And then there's definitely some in the middle, right? But I would think like LA is kind of a hub that's known for this. There are some in New York. There's some in the Carolinas. So they're a little bit harder to find. You definitely have to do some investigative work and truly date. You are literally dating these people as you talk to them. You're dating these agencies. You're dating these factories. You're really trying to understand, are they the right fit for you? And I feel like I've talked to a lot of founders who start out with the goal in mind that they're going to make their product USA based. And then the minute they start dating and talking and vetting through these relationships, these factories, they're realizing that their product maybe can truly either not be made in the US because of the item type, or that the fabric and raw materials are still coming from overseas, or that the price just doesn't work with the market, right? So there's all these different filters and layers. Yes, it does exist. Yes, there are, again, factories and agencies out there that do focus on USA manufacturing, but a lot of it's going to come down to your product and where your product fits in the market.
I think pricing is probably the biggest thing that comes up when it comes to domestic agents, because like you said, they need to take their cut for the work they've put in and like their overhead, and then they're also paying for the product on your behalf usually. It can just be a non-starter for some people.
And also you have to think about even going factory direct here in the US, our minimum wage is very different than what other countries require as a minimum like living wage, right? So especially when you talk about LA manufacturing, I mean, the minimum wage in LA is significantly higher than the minimum wage here in Columbus, Ohio. That's just the reality
Absolutely.
of what it takes to live out there. And then you layer on a skilled sewer on top of that minimum wage. And that is why USA domestic production can also just cost so much more to make, because literally the labor is maybe 10, 20x what you might pay in another country, to be honest.
Sure. There is a factory I visited in LA. It's been a while ago, and I knew they were making some very premium accessories and leather goods for another US brand. And I thought, oh, this is a aspirational US brand. I'm going to make my products here too. And we went, and it just, the numbers didn't work. Even as a larger scale brand I was working with at the moment, it still didn't work for us. And it was because we were in a more of a fast fashion world, whereas this aspirational maker who was making their things there was charging hundreds of dollars for a product that I was going to charge 30 for. Like, it just didn't work.
Yeah.
But the US factories that it has worked out really well for me in the past has been factories that are largely dependent on automation and machinery. One of the factories I worked with on Long Island, they were mostly machinery. So you're not paying as much when it comes to man hours or minimum wage. You're paying for someone to like monitor a machine.
Got it.
And so that worked out. So it's all about, like you said, the dating, the vetting, asking about those costs, asking about those MOQs, and making sure it works for your brand.
So let's say you've done the domestic route and you're realizing that whether it's capabilities, whether it's pricing, or whether you just can't find what you're looking for, it's time to date overseas. So we're opening up a whole nother world of conversations with people that, you know, might not speak your language.
Yes.
And might not understand your product and what its viability is in the market. So let's first talk about the ways in which you can, again, find different partners overseas. So let's talk about agents, because agents is a little different than agencies like we were talking about domestically. So let's talk about overseas agent. If you might have heard people say that, you know, might hear people talk to, you know, middlemen, they're also called. So an agent.
Or a vendor.
Or a
I call
vendor.
them a vendor a
Vendor
lot.
as well. So where does an agent come in when we talk about overseas manufacturing?
An agent usually is a larger scale operation that has a network of factories they work with, and they can place your orders with anyone in their network. And they have folks in-house who will help with the language barrier. They will help. I think a lot of my agents would take my emails, completely translate them, and then speak to the factory on my behalf. Like, they would even translate my tech packs into another language so that the factory could read it. Because if you go factory direct, which we'll talk about in a moment, there are factories who have a representative who speaks English, or a representative, an account rep, so to speak, who would work with you. But there are a lot who don't. There are a lot who you would have to depend on that agent or that vendor to even get in the door, to even speak with someone.
Correct.
Because you couldn't on your own.
So the middleman, agent, right, vendor, as you're saying, pros are they have an existing network.
They have an existing network, yep.
They're usually very fluent in English.
Mm-hmm.
And they're usually very well versed in the manufacturing world, right? That's what they do day in, day out. So what are some of the downsides of using an agent?
They'll take their cut too. It's less than a US agent. But you pay them, and then they pay the factory, which I guess I would put that in a pro.
Correct.
They also manage the POs on your behalf.
Correct.
Which is great, but you're paying them. And, you know, sometimes there is that go between. You do feel, if it's the wrong agent, if the like match isn't great,
Yep.
you will feel that friction or that lag between when you ask something and when you actually get the answer. If you have an amazing agent, there will be no lag. Like, they are like an extension of you and an extension of the factory, and it flows very smoothly.
Something else I think of with an agent. So there is also usually a wall then built between you and the factory.
Yes.
Right. So you are now not talking to the factory direct. You're not creating a relationship, most likely, with your factory. You're creating a relationship with this third party person, this middleman.
Mm-hmm.
I also think pro con with an agent, I utilize agents when I'm talking about new product categories that I might not have an existing relationship or an existing factory for, or for a customer who has a lot of breadth of product. Let's say they're in accessories and they're in apparel and they're in jewelry, right? They're in multiple categories of business. And sometimes having one agent control all of that is worth the increase in price
Totally.
for the complexity of the project. All of a sudden we are writing one PO to our agent, right? And they're managing 5 factories on our behalf. So I think there's a lot of wins that can happen there. However, if I have one specific product and I know I want to have that relationship with the factory because we're going to build and scale based on this one product idea, that's where I think going factory direct has a lot of benefits.
I'm going to go back to what you just said and just give a real life example, because I think that for listeners who are new to this world, I don't know that you would know how many things you use on a daily basis probably have to go between multiple factories. So you have a cute headband on today,
Thank you.
a little straw headband. But think about if that headband were to have any sort of like hardware on it. I made some headbands a while back that had cute little Disney or college football like iconography on them, or like metal pieces.
Yep.
Well, the metal pieces were from a jewelry factory actually, because they had gems and they had enamel and they had, a metal casting. But then the headband was being made at a different factory who had cut and sew, sewing machines, capabilities like that. So the agent who we worked with was able to identify the proper factory for the hardware, the proper factory for the software, put them together and get a finished good.
Got it.
So that was a really great green flag, let's say,
Yeah.
for an agent, is they can manage products that span multiple factories.
That's great. So then when does it make sense for you? When would you go factory direct then? Let's talk about that, right? So we talked about agents having these middle people to help bridge the gap between the factories, which you're going to pay for. But when would it make sense in your world to be going factory direct?
I think that if you've established a relationship with a factory and they have a good infrastructure where they can speak with you via email on a daily basis, and your product is narrow enough that they can make the whole thing under one roof, not whole thing under one roof, they can manage the ins and outs of the different suppliers. But if they're a big enough operation that they have an account rep, they can speak English enough for you guys can communicate, and they have the ability to make your product, and your brand is largely that one product. If you were doing like one PO this year of something random, I wouldn't go factory direct. It's not necessarily worth building this long-term relationship with a factory when you're just trying to do like a cute in and out gifts with purchase or something.
Correct. So I would say on the flip side then, when you're thinking about building a brand and you want to have more control and you want to have more ownership of the relationship, when you know you're going to be scaling, those would be reasons why I would go factory direct. And also when maybe a 5% or an 8% commission that an agent may take, when that might be the difference between being able to go wholesale with your item or not.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, right, that margin that they are taking may be the best investment you ever make and the best, money allocation of money, because you have a professional, you have someone really helping you through the weeds of it all. But as you scale, margin counts, percentages count. And so you'll never really know what that factory cost is when you have an agent in the middle.
Yeah.
So again, I think it really depends on the product category, how specific you're trying to get, and the long game.
Yeah.
Within your brand.
Another just small thing to think about is that some factories are very small. And if you have a large or an expensive order, they may not have the overhead. They may not have the capital investment to make your product before you will pay them. So sometimes the agent acts as the bank for the factory, and the agent will front the money so the factory can buy the materials, pay their workers, and then you pay the agent.
Correct. So it really, again, there's a lot of nuances to it, but know that there's multiple ways to work. Let's also talk about going mill direct.
Yes.
So there are times where before you even get to the factory, you're having to work with fabric mills or raw material mills. Let's talk about
Did you do that with your pajamas?
So I did. I actually went mill direct because I knew that any one of my cut sew factories could produce my pajamas.
Mm-hmm.
What I needed was a specialty fabric that basically didn't exist. So for me to work through my factory to have that made was just getting lost in the sauce. I actually did, to be honest, start with my factory. They tried to bring me fabrics. I tested them. They were pilling. They weren't performing as well as I wanted them to. So I was like, scratch this factory. I'll come back to you when I'm ready, but I need to go source this fabric myself. So for me, going
Smart.
mill direct, which is literally the factory that makes the raw material, that knits the fabric, that finds the yarns, like that step before your goods are actually being made, was very critical for me. So I got to the answer faster by going mill direct. But for most customers that have more commodity based product, it's not really worth it. I actually pay a surcharge when I would go mill direct because then I'm forcing my cut and sew factory to use this fabric mill that I found versus they typically have their own relationships with fabric mills that have better cost associated with it. So I really only suggest, specifically in the apparel space, that you use a fabric, we call it a nominated fabric mill, like where you're going to tell your factory, no, I want you to buy from this person. I say it's important when the fabric is so critical.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, most apparel factories have their own fabric mill relationships with better pricing than if you're forcing a new relationship on them.
I think that's the same for accessories and jewelry too. I could tell my factories, no, I want you to buy Swarovski. And they would. They would do it on my behalf. But do they have their own CZ manufacturer who they prefer and who they can get better costing from? Sure. But it may not be the right colors or the right quality or whatever. And I've worked mill direct a lot when it comes to handbags, footwear, and sweaters. Because same thing, we've wanted to dictate that leather, the exact leather. So we've gone to mills. I say mills, that's wrong. It's tannery when it's leather.
Yeah.
We go tannery direct. I've gone to Italy several times to go to the tannery, to review what they have, to improve the color and make sure it's absolutely perfect before it's bundled up and shipped to, in that case, I think we shipped it to Brazil and we had footwear made out of it. And then same with yarns. They were made in Italy. We reviewed the color there. We reviewed everything and then shipped it to China to be knit into the finished good.
So I think it really depends on how specialty, I don't want to say special, but how specialty the raw material is that you're trying to source.
How big of a part of the end game it is for you.
Yes.
And I think this sounds very elite maybe, or like unattainable. We're like, oh, we're going to Italy, we're sourcing leather, we're blah, blah, blah. But these things are actually like quite easy. If you just go to like trade shows.
Correct.
You'll find these folks.
Correct. And that is really where I've met most all of my factory base, to be honest, has been from sourcing trade shows where they will come from India, China, Bangladesh, you name it. They set up a booth. It's literally like going to a fair, like a maker's mark. And they just have their booth, a 10 by 10 of all their capabilities. And if the owner technically isn't there, but they have a representative that's English speaking, basically at these events, at these trade shows. And you can build great relationships right off the bat because you're literally meeting them face to face. Like they have flown from China, they have flown from India. It is usually their businesses, or again, they're a head salesperson for the business. So I think it's an awesome opportunity to right off the bat get a vibe check. Right?
I had a lot of like amazing dinners and like drinks come out of some of these.
Oh yes, I mean there's the wining and dining is obviously a perk of the job for sure. But again, they want to get to know you. Like great vendors, again, like any relationship, it's okay to get deep. They want to know, every day that I'm sending a factory email, I'm asking them, how was your day? How was your son's birthday? Or I'm adding a picture of something great that I did this past weekend. Like they become part of your family if they're the right partner. They
Absolutely.
they're invested in you. They want to know how they're not just a robot on the other side.
They're dating you too.
They're dating you too, 100%. So think about that, everybody. Give and take.
Give and take, yes.
Okay, so let's talk about, speaking along our dating front, some red flags
Oh,
as you
geez.
are talking to, whether it's an agency, a factory, an agent. What are some things when you send that first email and you get something back and you're like, oh, yikes. Like
Oh
maybe
gosh,
it's going to be a red flag.
there have been so many. I am always turned off by really hard sales tactics. If I email someone and they follow up with me like every 12 hours, where's this? Where's this? Where's this? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Can we do it? Can we do it? I'm like, whoa, 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 like slow your roll. I am still formulating my plan. Of course, when you're starting a new brand, it's very stop and start. It's kind of tops down, bottoms up. You're trying to navigate what's best for your idea and your design while also finding someone. And it's kind of like the cars being built. Like, what's that?
Yeah.
I get that wrong every time. Like you're building the plane while it's flying or
totally.
something like
Yes,
that.
that's
I
it.
don't know.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so when they're like, what's the deal? When are you sending a PO? I'm like, whoa. Okay.
So they're when they're a little too clingy.
Clingy.
You would say when they're too clingy.
Too clingy. Don't love that. Or ghosting you.
Yep. Oh,
Like, hey, we were talking about this. Where are you?
I have a factory that, and we're on the outs, I'll say, but they are ghosters on the regular, and so then I'm jumping in WeChat and pinging them that way, which is basically, if you guys don't know, WeChat and WhatsApp are tools to use for free tools for international texting and calling and videoing, all the things. And so if the emails aren't getting replied to, then I start jumping in my WeChat or my WhatsApp and trying to ping them, basically.
Sliding in their DMs.
Yeah, basically sliding in their DMs. So yes, I think ghosting.
Or even like I had a factory who they despised email. They would never, this was a domestic factory. They would never reply to email. They would always call me.
Oh,
And I hated that, A, because I'm a millennial, I think, but B, because I have to organize my thoughts in word form. And when I organize the thoughts in word form, I need the response to be similar and not just so that I can digest it in my own time frame, but also because I would like the receipts.
yes, 100%. You need a track record of everything that has been said, confirmed. I mean,
and I would find that when they'd call me and they'd just spout off something, I could never hold them to it.
Yep.
They'd say, oh, this is going to be ready next Wednesday. And then next Wednesday would come and they're like, oh, yeah, maybe Friday. I just constantly felt like our communication was misfiring.
Yep.
And phone calls, a phone call will always be like a red flag for me. Like, I'm going to need this in writing, actually.
So here's another good one. When you reach out to a factory and they're not willing to show you what they've done for other customers.
Yes.
So every factory that has been in business for more than a few months should have a catalog. They should have showroom photos. They should have something to show for their business, even if they're working with customers who don't allow them to share their final products, right? So you can imagine
they can have a variation of, they can take the brand name off.
Yes. So even if they work for Disney and Target and they're saying, oh, we can't show you these customers' products, that's great, but show me something else that you've done. So it is probably as important as minimum order quantity as I'd love to see some of your work that you've done. And most likely, if you're finding these factories outside of Google, if you're using tools like Alibaba, they will have portfolios and catalogs on the ready to show you. But if you are finding someone via Google, or if you are finding somebody being a friend of a friend that's connecting you, like make sure you are asking them to showcase and show you items that they have produced. Now, of course, could it be fabricated images? Yes, but most likely you're going to be able to see through that. You will tell that these are actually showroom samples or catalog samples. So I think if they're not willing to show you that, red flag for sure.
Yeah.
Red flag.
That's a good one.
I'll also say in regards to communication, you were talking about phone, but also the minute you get that first email back, and if all of a sudden the English, what they're coming back and the way in which they're talking to you, if it is a struggle to even understand that first email back to you, red flag.
Yeah, your product development cycle is going to be
real slow,
arduous,
real hard. So you need to make sure. And sometimes, there are other account managers that are better in English than others. Like that's the reality. So you can always ask the factory, hey, is there someone that, is there a different account manager, another point of contact that I could talk to? But to be honest, if they know you're a US based company and they're not putting forth their best account manager in regards to being able to communicate with you, again, I would say a little bit of a red flag as well.
Yeah, I've had those folks, even folks I've met in person who their product has been great. But I like really struggle to communicate even what my needs are. I'm like, this is not going to work, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I would say if a factory is not willing to give you any answers in regards to just getting off the ground, right? Like you need to ask them about sampling. What are their minimums? What's the timelines? If even basic questions are being slow on the reply or not very clear, again, red flag, it's probably not your best partner. So let's flip the conversation to what are the green flags? What are some things when you are sending that first email out to a factory or an agent and they get back to you and you're like, oh, hell yeah, like this is my person. Like this is where I belong.
I think using language that lets me know they're an expert, that lets me know they're critically thinking about my product. So if I send them a design idea and they come back and say, oh, we evaluated your idea, we were thinking it might be best if you did this or that, it could work better. I'm like, great, you are critically thinking about how this is going to work. You're not just verbatim like knocking off the picture I gave you. You're actually thinking about it. So this critical thinking skills, and that's a big ask too. I'm not saying if they don't have this, they're not a good factory or vendor. There's a lot of cases where you'd want someone to just do exactly what you told them and not ask too many questions. But there are cases where I do want the input there. There was a product I made last year where I needed someone with like a very good knowledge of steel molds to tell me, does the way I've designed this make sense for how the mold works?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I would say some factories are definitely better than that than others, right? Some factories will do a really good job of connecting the dots and ideally offering you solutions, not just problems. So
right.
It's always helpful when they're like, hey, we can't do this, but if you do XYZ, we can get you a similar outcome. Now, that doesn't always happen. It doesn't mean it's a bad factory if they're not bringing you solutions. But I would say, especially if you're using someone like an agent, that's where I would expect,
of course,
that they are troubleshooting for you. You are paying for them to critically think on your behalf, where sometimes the factories might be a little bit more cut dry.
And you also do have the ability to say that to them. I've had agents before where the account rep who was working with me was not doing that. And I said to the agent head, hey, I'd really like for there to be a little bit more back and forth. I need some suggestions on this project. I would love for the account rep to dig in, do a little bit of research and come back to me with some ideas. And they said, okay, they aren't going to be presumptuous enough to think that you want that unless you ask for it.
Correct. Yeah,
sometimes.
That's fair. That's fair. I would say green flags again, when that first email comes back and they're really giving you detail.
Yeah.
Like they're really laying it out well. Their email reply is organized.
Formatted nicely. You really win me over with some good formatting.
I would agree. And I think when they're able to help explain, your product category, if they're like, hey, we are an expert here, like here's what we've done before, right? And you see those pictures of those showroom samples, you're like, oh yeah, like this is my person. Like they're getting it. They're getting what I'm trying to do. And again, having a personal relationship right off the bat, again, when they're replying back, I'm someone, if my factory is not warm, even just in the communication, to be honest, and it might sound silly, but like that's important for me, that there is a human connection, that there is a personal touch there, that again, it makes me feel like they'd be willing to go the extra mile for me, just in the way that they're communicating.
Absolutely.
So those are some green flags and red flags to watch out for here as you are navigating your factory or agent relationships. So couple key takeaways here. When we think about it, make sure you know your product and the stage that you were at to help you pick your perfect match. Yes. So where you are in the cycle, are you starting off? Are you concepting?
Are you testing?
Do you already have a product that you're maybe buying through a wholesaler and you're ready to take it to the next level. So you're really clear and specific on what you want. And you have an idea of the volumes that you're trying to hit. So I think understanding where you are in your product journey is really going to help dictate who that best
Obviously,
partner
you
is.
wouldn't be able to hire someone off Facebook to make something for you if you're like, hey, I need you to like meet me halfway on the idea for this. They'd be like, no, just tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Exactly. Make sure you're asking the right questions before you're committing and making the plunge into that relationship. Like I said, we've given a lot of good questions. And if you listen to previous episodes, you'll understand a lot of the right questions to ask to make sure that you are truly finding the perfect partner. And I would say, just like in relationships, don't settle. Like there are so many factories and agents out there that can help you bring your product to life. So if you're feeling in your gut that it's just not aligning, then give yourself a little bit more time to find that perfect person, because they do exist. There is a factory out there that's going to meet you where you need to be. So if it doesn't feel right, keep doing some more homework. Keep vetting out.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. And something that we didn't really talk about as we were going through the factories is that there are different price points associated with each one as well. We talked a little bit about agents being a little more pricey. Makers can really span the gamut. Going factory direct is always your most cost-effective option, but comes with its own set of troubles when it comes to communication, possibly, or the financial, changing of monies. And, but they all have implications when it comes to communication, when it comes to how good they are at your product, when it comes to their reach and accessibility and their network, and then also how much they cost.
And I think it's okay to date around. Right?
Totally.
I mean, it's okay to date around, and you should date around. I would say, even if you think you found the perfect factory with your first reach out and your first search, do a few more.
That's actually such a good point, and something that we do often in more of a corporate environment that you can totally do is that if I'll send out like a test tech pack. So if I have 5 things I'm trying to do, maybe I'll send 1 to 3 different factories, get their feedback, establish how they're working with me, get their costs, see what kind of work they do, and then from there, choose the one that I jive the best with, and then send the rest of the 4 tech packs to them.
I love that. So important. I'm constantly multi-sourcing with multiple factories. I mean, almost every item, to be honest, is usually going to at least a couple different factories to understand, again, capabilities, whether it's pricing, whether it's lead time. Sometimes one factory is just going to be faster than another.
Right. And you could use that to your advantage too if you have someone who's maybe local and very fast. So working with them simultaneously with working with someone overseas, so that once you scale and expand, you can move to the next step, jump pretty quickly. So there are a lot of ways to use these different types of factories, to use multiple factories in conjunction to yield the best time, cost, communication scenario.
And I think what's important to know here is that the right partner will make everything smoother, from sampling to bulk production, but that there's no right person for everybody, just like in life, right? We find our partners, our romantic partners, right, because they're the right fit for you. It's like what you need as an individual is the same thing when it talks about a factory, right? Like you need to find the one that's going to work for you. So know that factories are not a one size fit all. No. And it's really important to do the homework, do the research, date around until you find that perfect match.
Awesome.
So speaking of finding your sourcing soulmate here, we have some exciting little information we're going to pitch out here too towards the end of this, wrapping up this episode.
Guys, we are so excited.
So excited. We are soon to be launching a 6-week course in June that is going to give you a step-by-step guide through this entire process. Like, take all the podcasts we've been talking about, wrap them up,
times 10
in the most amazing course to get you and your product scaling off the ground.
It's something that we have been talking about a lot. We've had a lot of reach outs even since we launched this podcast about folks who have product ideas, who want help taking the next steps. And some of it is finding a factory. Some of it is leading through the merchandising math and how to frame the product. Like, the whole gamut of bringing a product to life.
Yes. And as part of our ambassador round, we're actually opening up 20 exclusive seats. So the first 20 to opt in to the Sourcing Gals coursework, you're going to get some freebies.
Some amazing freebies. And I want to say it's not just the first 20, like we're capping it at 20.
For sure. You're right. We are. We're capping it at 20 for this first go round.
Yeah. And the reason why is just because we want some really invested ambassadors to get with us on like the ground level of launching this program. And in exchange, we're going to have some, like Jackie said, some amazing freebies and some coaching, some one-on-ones,
some personalized support for you and your product, which again is going to be, we're so excited and we hope that you guys are excited too. So if you are interested in learning more about this upcoming coursework, head over to our website, thesourcinggals.com. There's going to be a button where you can join our email list, and you will literally be the first to know. And we'll also have additional information coming out about how to get your name added to the wait list.
Yes. Please go ahead and do that. If it is by any chance too complicated, you could always also email us hello@thesourcinggals.com, and we will connect with you, add you to the list, make sure you are in the know, and you get all the details of when we launch this program, which is going to be in June.
So exciting.
It's soon.
Let's go. Let's go. Okay. Well,
June's next month.
I mean, it's like really soon. So, okay. Yeah, here we go. We got things to do, guys. We got to go. So thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. Until next time with the Sourcing Gals. See you later.